pretty much the imagined stereotypical kind of elf ranger, and I was not Drizzt because I didn't want to make a Drizzt, but he kind of was Drizzt. I thought I could get by just being like this lone ranger guy in the corner, just like eyeing up everybody and then that sort of thing. It didn't really work out. I basically started out on the ocean, and everyone washed ashore, and I was the one that didn't wash ashore. So I was like outside drowning, and they saved me. And yeah, my first encounters was pretty much me and this rogue snuck off to check out this lizardman encampment. Um, Once we got there, we had no idea what to do, and they saw us and basically one shot the rogue while I ran screaming in terror. Uh, and the rogue had basically sacrificed himself because it was like my first character, so it was like either we both run and probably like both of us die, or we'll see how the odds go, or he'll just like kill his character for me. So I guess thanks for that. Um, Later in that campaign, I ended that. It was only a few sessions, but we ended that. Um, we had gotten some weird boons from an angel, and I basically became a better ranger, and another guy got these wings. But we were on a slaver ship, and this other player who had been causing so many issues during the entire course of the tiny mini campaign we had done, decided that the best option at that point was to set fire to the ship.
Oh,
And
jeez, that's always good.
like as soon as we had like basically started engaging the slavers, and me and this guy are at the crow's nest because that's where I was like, I'm gonna sleep in the crow's nest, because
Safe place
that's
to
what
go.
I do. Yeah, it's high ground. People have to come up to get me. I can just shoot at them. Like, yeah, it's fine. Um, so he sets the ship on fire. So we basically ended that with the ship on fire. And
Were you still sleeping in the crow's nest?
no, we were awake by this point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like,
But
but yeah, he was basically the next session. In my mind, we were all gonna die out there in the middle of the ocean because I didn't have wings. The other guy in the party didn't have wings. Only the guy who set the boat on fire had wings. He was gonna get shot out of the sky by me. He was not getting away.
oh,
So it would have been bunch of slavers, a bunch of would-be adventurers, and a bunch of poor misbegotten slaves dying in a boat on the ocean. So an ignoble ending,
there's so
but
many boats that end badly. Like I didn't know how many
some
boats
dangerous
really
ones.
were important in in D&D history until I started homebrewing and hearing about your guys' stories. It's like, yeah, we all started on a boat, or this is a boat, and that's a boat, and there's boats here and there because it's like the main form of travel.
Well, a boat is this. Like a lot of people haven't really traveled on boat a lot in real life, and it's also this thing where a lot of adventures don't take place on boats. So to start off, with you're in the sea or you're on a boat or yada yada, like it condenses the adventure to a very specific point, and it helps the DM probably have a lot of stuff set up for the first couple sessions. But it also puts you a little off kilter too, because you're paladin with chainmail is like I'm on this boat,
If he
you
gets
know,
knocked, if he gets tilted, he's
yeah,
going over and he's down.
this boat better not go down. And then when you're usually attacked,
Yeah.
session one or session two, or you're fighting on this boat, you're like, there's a hole in the boat. That's not good. That's
Or
not
we
good.
forgot our anchor.
Exactly.
Maybe we use your paladin.
Yeah, or you're a slave on the boat or whatever it is. It puts you off kilter, so you have to like hopefully think about things in your character that isn't just the standard. Well, I'm this big hunking piece of metal.
Yeah.
You know, come at me. I'm gonna get to you eventually, because there's only so much space on the boat, and
Mhm.
if the boat's gone, there's way too much space
Yeah.
outside of the boat.
It condenses you down onto the boat. I mean, I liked starting Throne Desolation. I don't know if I started Rotten to the Core. Throne Desolation, I always started on a boat because I wanted you to choose what you started as, whether you were a crew member, a slave. I added Trespasser later, but that was for the vampire, the person who became a vampire without knowing it. If you pick Trespasser, then you just day one you'd be like, okay, well, why am I in this box? Well, you're a vampire, and I would tell them I would tell them behind their whatchamacallit, behind the DM stream. I guess I would message them. Thanks for the follow, Exacxior, I guess Excelsior type stuff. We gotta follow
Zacian.
Zacior, yeah,
Maybe.
probably how it's pronounced. Hopefully, that's how it's pronounced. But yeah, I told the people who picked Trespasser behind the DM screen, I would tell them, hey, you're a vampire. Don't let anybody know until they really need to when they break you out of this coffin that's at the bottom near the slaves. And the slaves would have to interact with just a coffin. It's like you're just a bunch of slaves down there with this coffin in this boat that's tilting back and forth. And like the boat is an adventure, is an environment in itself that like you could spend a lot of time on or a good chunk of the story in until you get to the land, of course.
Yeah, so you said trespasser. What did you guys? What did you have your PCs like pick some sort of like I'm a trespasser. I'm a whatever whatever
Yeah,
or
it was like an archetype type system that I had written up before starting the campaign. So when people would sign up for the campaign, I had like 4 to 5 things listed. It was crew member, passenger, which passenger is just like your general adventurer. I had slave, and I had trespasser. So it was four.
Mhm.
They would pick from. It had a little general description of what you were. You would pick that, and I said you guys have to pick one of these when you start. And then they also had a couple of them came with certain things, like a slave. You picked um, a crime you had committed. So like you had to tell me a crime you committed and which you were wrongly accused for, or something
Yeah,
like that.
I kicked an
Uh,
old lady.
in the throat, yeah. Kicked an old lady in the throat. It
Whoa,
was
whoa.
it, it definitely
Okay,
wasn't me. I'm a gnome that kicked an old lady in the throat, and it wasn't me.
sick.
Um, Trespasser was you had to pick like a daily job or daily task that you did. And so what happened was when you picked Trespasser, that built into your backstory that a certain NPC went over there and kidnapped you um, when you were doing that specific task. If you were a crew member, you had to pick a job you did on the ship, and that would give you a benefit. Like RP wise, there was a lot of cool things to add in the beginning of the game that I really liked, and I will do again in the future because it added a lot of elements that bled into the story that helped people get connected with the actual world that I had created.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. It's similar like the background system 5e has, but um, it seems like you simplified it to simply, like this is your job or this is your, direct connection to the world or that sort of thing. So that it actually, and then from there you could, yourself create things in story that certainly are affected by your quote unquote archetype. Because backgrounds tend to, I mean, they're interesting, but a lot of times they become just another way to gain skill proficiencies or, you know, whatever.
Yeah, we
So,
really didn't have any mechanics, set up with the archetypes. It was just the RP because I wanted people to add themselves to the story because it was hard getting people together to actually explain their backstories, or they didn't flesh them out enough to understand my world. I think maybe next time that I run it, I will build the archetypes, but I'll also have like one-on-one sit-down sessions with people to get them built into my world, to have them ask questions about the homebrew, and just understand really where they want to fit within the world, and then that'll give them some sort of driving force to speak with the NPCs and that. Drasty's talking to you
yeah, yes.
because you just played in his campaign today, right? Fellowship.
Yeah, I played earlier.
Do you want to talk about a memorable moment from that?
A memorable moment from Fellowship. Probably, we started Fellowship pretty, you would imagine, like standard. You're part of this adventuring guild. Your party is also part of this adventuring guild. You're on a quest for this adventuring guild. Pretty basic stuff. You go to a new place, find another adventuring party. We found them. Ultimately, uh, we found a box that clearly should not be open. Um, and we figured out, hey, we just need to give this box blood, and it'll open up. And we were talking like, if it's a demon or whatever, or, we'll take it out. It's fine. We'll do this. We just really want to open the box. So we open the box. this crazy, basically Illidan-esque figure comes out. This like half elf, half demon
With the
thing.
blades and everything.
He did not have warglaives. Drassi actually told us, he was like, because when he described this guy, I and others were immediately like, so he's Illidan, and Drassi was like, no, he's not Illidan. His name is Alinar.
It's
But
like you guys don't know
he
about
was Illidan.
Illidan. Your characters don't know about Illidan. Do they have World of Warcraft subscriptions?
Yeah, I mean Alinar Illidan, he was Illidan.
Mm,
He was not leveled up to the warglaives yet. He needed a couple more experience points. Um,
got it.
but yeah, probably the final fight versus Alinar, because it was interesting in that it was a bit of a phased fight, which isn't very common in D&D. Sometimes, like in the monster manual, you'll get monsters and lair actions, which in some way attempt to affect like the region around you, to give an extra dynamic. But phase-wise, it was like there were traps on the ground that we didn't actually activate until later because he had put in just these squares, and all of us just naturally did not step in the squares
Mm,
till someone did, and it was like, oh yep, fire. Oh yeah, that's why we didn't step in them. But it was yeah, it was a crazy fight. A bit of a tactical mistake by the big bad. He put an anti-magic field up, which basically made it so that no one could do magic, which was fine. But with two fighters, and him being able to use all his cool stuff, needing magic, it was kind of a bit of a tactical misplay.
mm.
But yeah, that was a pretty epic fight. I think the entire session was that fight. That fight was pretty long. So yeah, I mean that was probably a big moment in that specific campaign, that I'll probably remember for quite a while.
Yeah, I know we had talked separately about like the whole phase fighting system, and
Mm-hmm.
how it was similar to like World of Warcraft and that. And I mean, now that Legion's going to be coming out, and you mentioned Illidan, like it gets the ball rolling, like in terms of like thoughts about more phased fights in D&D. Like I really wanted to do a phase fight for my big bad necromancer. We just never got around to finishing up the sessions, which is okay. But the story still stands that I'm going to have to build that phase fight system for him, and I think referencing World of Warcraft will kind of help with that because of the gameplay that they have there. They already have like every fight they have, every boss battle they have has certain phases, whether it be one phase, two phase, or three phase. You know, those phases are there for you to kind of reference and study. And once, like in D&D, you're going to kill something, and it's most likely not going to happen again
Yeah.
unless you replay that same scenario with a different group. And even then, it'll be a different outcome. That's what's cool about the tabletop system versus MMOs is that MMOs have to be the same every time. Well, I guess not necessarily. The players do different things every time, but the boss themselves does the same thing every time. Whether or
Mm-hmm.
not he moves into a different area at certain percentages, he will do something different. Or sorry, do a different phase. But yeah, so that kind of like you talking about Drassi's Alinor. That was his name, right? Alinor. I'm saying it right.
Alinar. You can say
Alinar.
it
Uh,
if you want. It's
Okay,
easier to remember.
but yeah, I mean that sounds cool. That it was an entire session long boss battle, and Alinar got it. Thank you. Yeah, I mean it was an entire session long boss battle, and like I think that would be exciting. If I was, did you guys build up to this? Like, did you learn about
I
this
mean,
guy? And,
I don't remember exactly what level where we were when we fought him, but like from level one to level like six, seven, like I think it was like five, above five, something like that. It was, you're above the beginning kind of stage levels, definitely. Um, yeah, it was building up to Alinar. Um, we had left the initial island and done some things and et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of the campaign, pretty much up until that point, had in some way touched on Alinar, either being released or things that like revolved around him.
hmm,
Um, so there was a lot of build up to that point, and then previously, before fighting Alinar, we actually went like 4 sessions without a short or long rest. Um, so we were pretty taxed. But the fight itself, like, it was interesting because, as you say, like, in WoW, when I go up to that boss, I usually have a vague understanding of what he might do. Sometimes you don't, depending on what kind of guild you're in, how hard you press the rating aspect of that game. But you die, you go over that fight, 10, 20, 30, 40 times. Maybe even more, depending on how hard the fight is, how many people need to switch out to learn the fight. But the fight's the same. You learn the mechanics, you know how to beat it. But in D&D, you know, you fight once and your characters die if they mess up.
Yeah.
You didn't catch on to this mechanic, then, that mechanic did whatever that mechanic did. Um,
And maybe in the history books, people will learn about it. That something happened there. I think that's something that I would like to do more too. That threat of actually dying as a character, because I give so many breaks to people. I would feel worried as a DM to keep the game running, to not kill these characters. If they did die for some reason of me not understanding something, or them making a mistake, I didn't want them to stop playing the campaign because their character died. And that's what they devoted all their time to. So I would, devise some resurrection scheme or something for their character. And I think it happened too much that it became kind of like in the game, people didn't really care in the RP sense, kind of just drained down. Yeah. Oh, you're saying that you fought him and you didn't level to 10?
I don't think we both that session, which was so. Ugh.
He didn't have the warglaives, that's why. That's why you didn't level.
I mean, I still need to find the warglaives. So
But on that note, in terms of the boss and what you mentioned before, we can go into our next segment, which is going to the mechanic. You were talking about lair actions. I think we should talk about those for a little bit, because those things are things that I've been itching to use, but I haven't done so because I didn't want my players to explode, or I actually had forgotten that they had lair actions, and I forgot to use them. So what do you think about lair actions? What are some monsters that you have used in your repertoire that have had lair actions? Maybe you haven't used any, I don't know.
No, I actually haven't used any monsters with lair actions yet. I'm actually bringing some of them up now. But like some of the monsters that I know have lair actions are some of the real big ones. Usually they also have legendary actions as well. So the lair action is a bit just kind of on top of that. Usually it has its own initiative order, so it kind of acts as its own creature,
Yeah.
almost. But for instance, like the first one you'll see is this aboleth. Um, and yeah, I mean some of these lair actions here, like water in the aboleth's lair magically becomes a conduit for the creature's rage. It can target anyone it can see in such water within X amount of feet, and they make a DC Wisdom saving throw or take damage. That's just sort of a straight separate damage lair action. I think there's probably others that, maybe like sand kicks up in the Mummy Lord's lair, and you now have disadvantage on attack rolls because you just have sand in your eyes, right?
Yeah.
And the Mummy Lord doesn't because it's his sand. He doesn't care. He's the Mummy Lord. That's why do you think he built this lair action into his place?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and they're interesting because they add another dynamic that people have to deal with, and they could potentially like increase the, like kind of the threat of the creature itself, instead of just having this thing in a room that you fight, and it's just maybe it has a couple semi-interesting spells that you never dealt with before, um, but you suddenly put this thing in its own lair, and it's kind of a king in its own little domain. um, there's a lot more things you have to deal with, preferably, and you have to take into account, that isn't really caused by this thing. It's caused by the fact that it exists in this area. So.
Now, do you, with lair actions and that, in terms of getting the players prepared for that, like say most characters aren't going to know about these creatures until they've encountered one. Now, would you give them an opportunity prior to that, or have you ever given them, well, I know you haven't used anything with lair actions, but would you give them an opportunity to take, like, say they go into a library and there's a lot of books that are covered in dust or something, and they relate to like a mummy's lair, or whatever, if they decide to go search around, like would you call something out to say like, oh well, there's a book listed like wrapped up in gook. I don't know what it would be called, but like
Hmm.
and then if they decide to go sift through it, you would give them a little blurb about maybe a lair action or something, and then when they verse the creature, you have it where it's like that happens and only one of you recognizes it. You don't even have them roll or something, but it's like that person had read the book, so you kind of understood it and they got an advantage on that. Would you ever do something like that?
It really depends. Like, let's just take for instance, like a mummy lord, right? For whatever reason, PCs need to grab an amulet from the mummy lord. It died with this thing, right? So they have an idea of what they're facing. They know that this is some sort of undead creature in this, his pyramid, his tomb, whatever, his crypt. Um, I would have the lair actions. I would have the stuff that the mummy lord can do, all of that. If the PCs just went straight there and didn't really prep along the way, didn't really think, hey, maybe we should look up, what can mummy lords do? What was this guy's backstory? Like, is there anything that could help us? Then yeah, they find this stuff out when they get there. Um, but yeah, I mean, if PCs wanted to look up stuff like in a book, find someone that might have dealt with these things before, whatever. Yeah, I would totally give them some sort of ideas about what's going on with, what like you always have to hold one thing back, right? I always think no matter what, you hold one thing back. There's always a surprise.
Yeah, you can't give them
Um,
everything because then it becomes redundant and boring in a
yeah,
sense.
but if they're really if they're good about hey, we want to actually like prepare for this thing in some way, then yeah, give them as much as they get, whether you want to do it by dice rolls or whether you want to do it by who they talk to, or I guess how much they want to go into this. That's up to you as a DM. But yeah, that's another way I think that phased fights can happen in D&D as opposed to an MMO where you know PCs research. They look up things. They find out about their opponent, right?
Yeah.
And from there, hopefully the first time they go through that fight, they survive because they know what they're facing.
I mean, especially rangers too, because I know rangers have like known enemies or picked kind of like they're hunters. So I mean,
Hmm.
they're essentially going to hunt one foe and be better at hunting them. I think when you choose the character, I could be wrong. I think that when you create the character of a ranger, you choose your favorite enemy or something like that. Maybe at a certain level, um, but
I
essentially
think
like
it's level one.
level
I think
one
it's
they get.
early, very
Yeah.
early.
So a lot of the people that I've known who played Rangers pick like dragons because like it's cool to go and hunt dragons and collect their scales and all that stuff. Yeah, old mage is like Rangers.
Hmm.
um, but yeah, I mean, in terms of that kind of stuff, I think that it makes sense as a player to go out and like strive to learn as much as you can about your foe. So whatever chance you get, you should be learning about that dragon. You should be learning about where they live, how they sleep, like what type of different quirks they might have about the creature, and then you learn all that stuff about it. And then when you do encounter one in the world, you can inform your party that hey, this layer is dangerous for A, B, and C. Like I've used a green dragon against people. A green dragon bit Duke's leg off. So, I
I feel
mean,
like a lot of Duke's characters lose limbs
because I think
or
Duke
their
as
sanity.
yeah, Duke as a player, I think has a uh, like an archetype to himself in a sense. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like the Green Dragon, they have something where you can. I think they spawn like these roots and vines from the ground. They
Hmm.
might be thorned, I believe, but they get captured in it. So you have to like break
Basically,
through all
like
the vines.
nature. Sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, like nature. Just there's a lot of roots, vines,
Mhm.
um, very, very glade grove sense, not necessarily a cave or a mountain. It's very like this green dragon is in the middle of a very
Of a
dense like
force, and I
fog
think that's such a
or forest.
cool. That's why I picked that dragon to throw at them because they were traveling through like a pine forest or just like a forest in general, dense forest, and like they can like hang onto these trees and like almost blend in. But there was a huge cave that they went into, and it was like, hey guys, I told them multiple times. I was like, this cave is bigger than any cave you've ever seen. You know, it's not like man-made or anything like that. No one's going to go in there and make that. It's not like local dwarves went in there to go mine. And they just insisted, no, we're going to go in there. So when they went in there, what did they encounter? A big, huge green dragon. And outside was one of the dragons. Or maybe, you know what, I could be mistaken. It was, I think there might have been the baby dragon outside that they killed. And then
Hmm.
they went inside the big cave where the dragon had been sleeping on. So it was like, hey, you killed the baby. Now why don't you go inside and go greet the mother? And that's where Duke got his leg bit off. And then what happened was they retreated, hid in Liamin's tiny hut or whatever that is. I don't, the invisible hut type thing, some
Oh
spell.
man.
And then they hid in that for a while the mother dragon flew around pissed off in the sky looking for them. When they exited the the tent or the invisible hut, they ended up fighting the mother, and they eventually killed it, but it was pretty intense. And the lair actions um, made it pretty cool because they did fight it in the cave for a little bit, in which they got blocked from a lot of the growth that it's spawned there. So I really liked the green dragon because it also, I believe the green dragon, I could be mistaken, uses the poison. Yeah, poison breath. So like it uses that kind of fog that goes through the vines. So like you can spawn vines, but like use the smoke to go through the vines. So you got like people trapped in a cave with smoke coming through that's poisoning them. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty dynamic environment. That's yeah. I mean, each dragon or creature has its lair, so I mean they're gonna have different aspects to it, and hopefully we'll make the encounter more interesting. So yeah.
Yeah, I think lair actions are really, really cool added bonus to a lot of creatures. Legendary actions as well are something that's really cool. Having the ability to do something outside of the norm. I really like those. So like when you get higher level, that's when becoming like the DM's repertoire becomes a larger landscape that they can throw at you in a sense, and that's what I liked about starting level tens because I had a whole new repertoire of monsters I could throw at them with the
Yeah,
legendary actions.
yeah, legendary actions are really cool, and you can even throw them on low level creatures. I mean, there's not a lot on the DMG or the MM, um, very low level legendary actions. But I mean, for instance, there's a homebrew. Might be able to talk about it later. But I think it's like a CR2, CR3. It's a kobold, and it's got some legendary actions, and it's nothing crazy. It's like throw sand in your eyes. DC. Are you blinded? Or a free kind of melee attack, something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
uh,
so yeah,
or I can't pronounce his name. You pronounce it
Zacier.
from
Zacier.
Zacior. Yeah, so he mentions legendary resistance, and I've had legendary resistance on, I think the Demi Lich has it as well. It
Hmm.
could be the Lich or the Demi Lich, but I've used a Demi
Yeah,
Lich
both.
before, and I forgot to use legendary resistance. I didn't know that he had those. Oh, hey, how's it going, Paul? You got a different name on here. So we got all Steelborn people in here tonight. But after tonight, next Saturday, hopefully before next Saturday, if you guys can let your friends know about the talk show we're going to be doing every Saturday night, 7 p.m. Central. So definitely inform them. We want to get more people in here talking, chit chatting. Legendary Resistance is really, really cool because you got your players that are constantly trying to throw themselves at this creature. Like with the dragon, they want to grapple it, they want to hold it down, and you can just resist a lot of the stuff. Skill checks to yeah, saving throws. Sorry, to be like grappled down. So
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
a lot of those legendary actions and resistances too. I think are because action economy is a real thing in D&D. So when you have 4 or 5 players versus one thing, um, they just have way more than they can do within the span of their total turn as a party than this big dragon or this big lich can do in its turn. So legendary actions, I guess, was a way to try to allow the kind of big bad creature to insert itself more so and cause more effects in combat, as well as the resistances too. It's like I have these great saves. Oh, you finally like got to the point where the dragon rolled really low, and you grab this dragon, and hold it down. Well, guess what? The dragon decides no,
Yeah.
it doesn't care. You burned a legendary resistance. That's good. That's another mechanic of the fight you should know. But but yeah, you're gonna have to keep trying if that's what you want to do to this thing because it's got a certain amount and it's gonna keep just saying no.
Yeah,
So yeah.
definitely. And along with, so this is something I just read about now. I didn't know that they had these, but along with having like a lair in general, there are some regional effects that some of the creatures have. So you can even build more on top of just the lair effects because you've got environmental effects like listing here for a blue dragon's lair. You have thunderstorms rage within 6 miles of the lair, so you completely change the dynamic. And if you've studied that as a ranger, say, it's like, hey, there are thunderstorms around. Well, are there any other signs of a blue dragon? And they can figure that out on their own. That's a cool mechanic of how much your player characters want to get into the RP sense of things or the story.
Yeah, definitely. Like taking the green dragon as an example, you could make a fairly big point in saying, about these that the forest has certainly changed in this area. Like maybe you want your green dragon to be more swampy. Maybe its lair is basically kind of the nexus of this huge swamp region. And the swamp, like you guys walk in here, and the swamp should not be here, but it is, and there's like this gas everywhere, um, and there's a lot of plant life that like the plant life is just growing just out of control in this region. Like there's a significant difference, like miles and miles outside of this thing's zone of control, where it affects, you know, where it is. And then once you get to the layer itself, the actual, 120 feet, whatever distance you want this thing's layer actions work in, you even have like a much more intense like description of like, hey, this now you've come to like a complete swamp, and the entire area is covered in fog, not just parts, not just
Yeah, it
you've
builds
got
up.
vines everywhere, and yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, because I mean, I can't believe I didn't see this before. I guess the thing was, I was so ingrained in like, let's throw these creatures at them, that like I stopped thinking about the environment around them, and adding those regional effects gets you back into it because I didn't even know that the green dragon that I had thrown at them had all these regional effects that would have changed my story and would have changed the entire step-by-step process they would have used to get to the green dragon or kill the dragon, because there were like labyrinths that are created from all the different thickets that come together. So that's pretty cool.
It's even an easy way to be like your PCs are going towards this thing, and you as a DM aren't sure if they'll survive.
Mhm.
It's a good way to say like, hey, there's a marked difference here. You guys certainly keep going, but I'm making the point now that you know, there is something that is strong enough, magically or whatever, that it has affected the very landscape. So
Yeah, so
it's
it's
very
probably something you've never encountered before, and you might want to not soil yourself. So everyone roll the soil yourself. So that's when it becomes that time where you need to roll for that because no one's encountered it before, unless you have that one guy who's like, yeah, I've encountered this green dragon before, and then they try to metagame it. But hopefully you have players that really do understand the fear that someone would feel if you're witnessing a green dragon, or maybe you're too stubborn to witness a fear, and then you become, I don't know, drunk or something with courage and just run in there.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. For me, like Jurassic, gosh, yeah, we're gonna start
Just
this.
start throwing legendary creatures at him, Drasty. Just a ton of them. Like you find 10 green dragons in one room, and there's just thickets everywhere and poison gas.
I walk away.
You just walk away. I walk away.
Nope, nope.
I withdraw myself.
I withdraw myself. I leave. It was good. I guess I'll just wait till higher level.
Yeah,
Now, um,
100 unicorns. Yeah, there you go. And nightmares. No, nightmares riding unicorns.
yeah. One thing about like obviously you have the stat blocks and the monster manual and things like that, and obviously a lot of people will look into them and be like, this and this, and try to find that weakness of the creature, that their characters like probably definitely doesn't know or what have you. Um, I'm perfectly fine in things like, hey, these guys are looking at this thing, and one's like, hey, it's a spectator, right? And it's like, okay. And then they start going and telling everyone, this is the AC and the HP of a spectator, yada yada yada. And I'm like, all right, it's okay. I tell myself it's now a beholder.
Yeah.
It's no longer a spectator. You're dealing with something a lot different. And yeah, you just take something different, or you just change it. You just do you want. You can do a
That's
lot with
that's what I
this
need to really
description.
get into is like describing things rather than going into the mechanic portion of it. I think like say you're fighting that. For example, like if you're fighting just a mummy versus like a mummy lord type thing, I think
Hmm.
like just understanding the difference, in how they look and how they react to your attacks, rather than you swing your sword and it's you strike them and it does the same thing as it did to this other creature. So you don't really know the difference, but to be able to explain that your sword does something different, against the skin or against the scales of this thing. Like I need to figure out good ways to go about explaining that to my players to get them to really think about maybe what they're fighting.
Yeah, definitely. Those descriptions are, I think, me, I struggle with it because I think it's really important and it's really great as a player, when I have those descriptions. But I think it's certainly something with the PCs as well as the DM to describe, and the setting of the game will sort of decide how that works. Um, if you're a party of very mechanic heavy players, maybe that's just not something they want to do, and that's fine. But otherwise, a lot of people do like that. So just starting off simple, and just trying to make a point of saying one sentence about each swing or whatever. If like you've got a fighter running 6 swings or 4 swings a turn, you don't have to go crazy with every single swing, but you can just block all their swings in one, right?
Yeah.
And then immediately say the reaction of the creature or what have you. So
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I mean, we could dive into our next segment because I mean, this kind of relates to it in terms of explaining things and getting into character. Where we call this segment "NPC says what." So this is where we're going to talk about like RP. Is it important to you? Uh, is it something fun? All that kind of stuff. What a creature RP, character RP, enemies and friends and foes and all that kind of stuff. Just getting into RP in general. Like myself, I would love more RP in my games. RTTC, Rotten to the Core, what we were playing before I canceled the session or the campaign before we started this up. Um, like that was getting to the point where I wanted it to be exactly. You guys were RPing more than questioning mechanics, and it was getting a lot more, involved in terms of stories and backstories and understanding characters. Because I understood your character right away because you played your character in an RP sense. You made me create an entire game for these half orcs RP wise because you decided you weren't going to involve yourself in those type of battles or whatnot.
I don't, I mean, I don't know. Like when I made her, I had a very very general idea of what I wanted to do, but really I make a character and try to play them as I play the game. Just try to figure it out in game. But yeah, with her, I honestly, a lot of her was just wanting to see what you did.
Wanting to see
Like
what I did?
how will Bronze react to me making a point out of this? And then that turned into like I actually care about like one rock, two rock, or whatever the game
One
is
bone,
called.
two bone. We
Yeah.
got that in history. Yeah, that's something that I'm going to be using for my half orcs for years to come. It's like you see the half orcs sitting at the table, rolling bones. They've got drawings of a little halfling. Or what were you? You were a halfling or gnome?
Hmm.
You were a gnome, right?
No, I was a halfling. I was
Okay, cool.
a
You were a halfling.
halfling druid.
Yeah. So like, I mean, they probably have little drawings of you too. Like, basically you kept winning at it, so you became like some sort of legend in their eyes.
I think I did really well on that, like intelligence or whatever it was. It might have been sleight of hand. I don't know. It was something that I rolled to be like, I cheated the game or I understand the game, something along those
Yeah, yeah.
lines.
Like you actually had the intellect to know about one bone, two bone in the past. What it was. And most people didn't even know. And the thing that I think back to now is like, weren't did something attack you guys prior to that or during it? I mean, I think the Minotaur skeleton that was under your table blew the
What it
table up in the air.
what it was in that was we're kind of meeting in the tavern. I didn't necessarily walk up the table and be like, "Hi, I'm an adventurer. My name is this," and yada yada.
Yeah,
So I was with the orcs, and they were kind of meeting up and talking. Um, and you said that because I was like closest to the window, basically, I noticed a shadow over there. Um, and then from there, I'm not sure whether they implied it, but either way, it was like a mummy attacked us outside, or we talked to a mummy, and then, or not a mummy, it was something attacked. We were level 5, so it might have been.
yeah. It was a mummy that you guys did encounter, but the whole thing was get you guys to RP in that tavern. Like, were you guys going to actually go outside and encounter this thing, or were you guys going to sit in there and speak, talk about it? Some of you guys did talk about it for a little bit, and before you guys attacked the creature, you guys actually spoke with it, and so there was a bit of a dialogue that was being built with that, and you know, Owen, who was playing the paladin at the time, I think he was, but he became a cleric later on. He was like, "I'm going to straight up murder you because you're undead," and he was RPing his character the fullest, like, you know,
Mhm.
I'm gonna kill you because you're against what I believe in." And then he went and got punched in the face by a mummy. So, I mean, RP is really important to me in games, well, in D&D in general, because that's what I think makes it fun. That is what it is. It is an RPG, a tabletop RPG. So you should be RPing in it. When we get too caught up in mechanics, that's when we start having less fun, I think, and focusing too much on the books. I think the books should be that reference point, should be just over to the side. The DM's going to be, checking them most of the time. But I think players really shouldn't even have the monster manual or shouldn't even have the DMG, because if they can reference that while you're playing, then it makes it less fun for them because they don't have any surprise, there.
I think part of it is I know when I started, I mean, I started, I didn't know what I was doing, and then I learned what I was doing, and I read all these books. And for a little while, I was checking on monsters as they were coming up
Mhm.
in games. And then I think I started DMing a little bit, and I stopped doing that because it wasn't fun for me to look at the monster while it was being there. And I actually like it. Who is it? I think Drassi flavors a lot of his monsters, so it helps me not really like, you know, I have to like take time to look in the monster manual and just kind of. I remember a lot too, which helps, but uh, I just try not to look at it basically until like the game's over, and then I look at all this stuff. But also too, part of the fun of the game for me as well is the mechanic aspect of it. Like, I looked at a demi-lich once, and I was like, how do I take down a demi-lich? And I was like, all right, well, 5 grapplers will destroy a demi-lich. They just uh, put blindfolds over it, keep it on the ground, and just smash it against the stone until it breaks, right? Like, it can't do anything.
Yeah.
You've negated everything it can do. All it can do is hover, and you can't do that because it's got 4 or 5 guys on top of it. And that was just fun for me to do as a thought exercise. I don't think it really worked like that, but maybe. But yeah, I mean, some people will look at the monster manual and things, but it's nice if you have, even if you flavor things as something else, you know?
Yeah, I think that
A lot.
one of the main things too, like it relates to metagaming, is being able to not do that when you do know about it. Like if you do have the books, if you do have the monster manual, if you do have the DMG, even if you're looking at them as a character RPing, being able to not spew, out numbers. Yeah, custom monsters do help a lot if you're creating them. It takes time to create them, though. So if you're doing a lot of DM prep outside, it's good. But if you're on the fly and you're using the monster manual, then yeah, I think we're losing some frames like really bad. I just dropped to 0, so I don't know what's going on with my internet right now, but that's not good. We'll have it recorded anyway, so we can upload it.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, I
diving
mean,
back and forth.
watching it without sound, it seems okay, but I
It's
haven't
lagging right
watched it
now.
100%, so.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my internet. I can call Comcast because we just got it set up over here. So we're losing frames like a lot. Let's see. But yeah, so we're almost an hour in here. I'm not dropping frames anymore. Hopefully it stays like this. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the RP sense of things, um, I guess we could talk about custom monsters, custom NPCs in a sense. Like with NPCs, how important is it for them to really uh, RP, really get into like their background? Like, should there only be a couple of really important NPCs? How do you determine which NPCs will be important, which ones won't be important, and how influential they will be on the characters?
I think as a DM, you ascribe, I think it's ascribe would be the word. Maybe my English fails me, but you ascribe a certain amount of importance to certain NPCs, like the quest giver, excuse me, or whatever, like the guy that you go to all the time to buy things. And sometimes I think you should have motivations for NPCs in that sense, what they want, and that will give you a big heads into how they react to things and how they say things or how they RP. And also sometimes a lot of times PCs, like what I was kind of doing in your game was I was placing importance on things that you really weren't thinking of or placing importance on, right? Like the one bone, two bone, and that sort of
Mm,
stuff. And in that way, as a DM, you're kind of just spitballing that. Um, so I mean, if a generator works for you in that sense, that's great. If it doesn't, then attempt to kind of just run by the seat of your pants. And if you have your PCs ascribing importance to an NPC or to something that they will continue to interact with, then you can after that session flesh it out more, right? But yeah, you should definitely have enough that the things that you imagine they would interact with, they'll interact with, and then after that, you just kind of keep ideas in your belt just in case.
mm. Now, Paul or Zassier is asking, have you ever had PCs turn a creature into a recurring NPC? I've never had player characters turn a creature into a recurring NPC, but I've had people turn like random, just traveling, like a traveling merchant I had who was a little crazy and had his face painted and kind of looked like a clown with like striped, almost like a jester with like striped clothing and that. He turned into a recurring NPC that became pretty important. Um, he, yeah, he just led them through a lot of different events and I don't even know why I'm not mentioning this. Valen, the big bad necromancer in my campaign, um, wasn't anyone important in the past. Like I had my first campaign I ran for the Steelborn Legion, Stillwater Cleansing. Um, in that, he was just a simple old man that was studying magic, and one of my player characters involved themselves with him and ended up getting saved by him on numerous occasions, and then also saved his life. And he, in turn of being saved, was inadvertently corrupted and became this big, huge boss, became this big enemy because of player involvement with him. Otherwise, he would have just been an old man. I would have never created him. But since my players decided to do certain things in certain ways and unleash some sort of unholy spirit from this gem that was floating about, he would have never turned into Balin the Vile, the Necromancer, that is raging just undead waves upon the Earth. Or not the Earth, but whatever planet it was.
Yeah, he was definitely something I think. I remember that name coming up quite often in terms of like background lore because we didn't get too far. But I remember that name, and that's interesting that it started out as just this guy. That's when
Yeah,
he showed up.
just an old man, and
Was
was
gonna
just.
fade away.
I mean, essentially, I mean, the player that he's not in the community anymore, which is it sucks because he was a pretty good player. But he played a paladin of Mistra, with a purple cloak and everything, and he was all for paladins, and this old man was trying to teach him magic because Mistra, I think, deals with a lot of magic. I'm not 100% on the um, lore behind Mistra,
Mm.
but yeah, I mean, he was just an old man, and there were orcs that were attacking the town, and he ended up at the top of a tower and was being hung from the scruff of his shirt or whatever, his robe, and he was going to be dropped, and they dropped him, and because the paladin actually threw his sword and it spun and cut the orc in half, thus dropping Valen off of the tower. And then our rogue that was there jumped off the tower and kicked this gem that was floating in, because essentially it was the old man falling, then it was a gem falling, and then the rogue was coming after him, and the rogue kicked the gem into the wall, and it blew up and created enough force to actually like it had enough of an impact into the wall to blow out the wall and kind of lift Valen up a little bit and land him safely on the ground. However, blowing that gem up released some sort of unholy force that got into his arm and corrupted it, and then he almost died and turned into that necromancer for a moment. They defeated him. The power went away for a little bit, and then it came back and kept leaving and coming back. He battled with it for a while, and then finally became the big bad necromancer. So it was pretty cool that players created that, and that was like just all through RP.
Yeah, that's pretty legit. Um, yeah, I've never had NPCs turn a creature into, or PCs turn a creature into an NPC either. I had a group that attempted to domesticate an owlbear. It was difficult, and it got to the point where they just killed it because it was a little
They
too
put it out of
difficult.
its misery.
I mean, I'm on the side of the owlbear. Yeah. I mean, they put it out of its misery, I guess, but it was fighting till its last breath. Um, but uh, but yeah, I mean, things like sentient objects. I had a drift globe that was an angry drift globe, and it demanded a box because they had broken the box that it had been in, and it wanted a redwood box. And I let them know that redwood was not an immediately available uh, like lumber. They could certainly find it, but the boxes that they would be able to buy at the town they were in would just be kind of oak or something simple. Um, and yeah, I had a lot of fun with the Drift Club. I might have done it a little too hard because they just kind of left it in the box. Um, but yeah, the Drift Club will return.
I actually, I take it back. I see he's mentioning that he negotiated with the giant. Instead of eating them, the giant would send them on missions and find other things for them to eat. So my character's Duke, in particular, actually befriended a Fomorian giant. So that is a creature that they did turn into a recurring NPC. His name, which Duke found out because he was the only one who actually spoke the same language as the giant, um, he found out that the creature's name was Fromo, and he had a brother as well, and he ended up befriending them. They carry like Fromo, this nasty looking freaking was Fomorian giant, was carrying him on the shoulders and everything, and later on he eventually became enslaved by Valen, and now Fromo is chained in uh, the Shadow Realm or whatever. Not the Shadow Realm, freaking Yu-Gi-Oh! Now stuck in my head because you're talking about it. Shadowfell. Uh, his brother Samo.
Lord of the Rings, Frodo and Sam.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, but his name was Fromo, and Duke loved him very, very much, and he became a king in a sense of Shadowfell for a little bit, but he was tortured because he was left behind there because he saved the entire group from falling into Shadowfell and getting killed. So yeah, they definitely turned a creature that was nothing into a character because they decided to talk with it because Duke was very excited. I very much do like Shadowfell. Feywild, I really haven't dealt with too much.
See me, I love Feywild. I'm way too excited about Feywild. Um, like Shadowfell and stuff like that to me seems really easy. Um,
What's that supposed to mean?
I don't mean to like. It just seems easy. It's just like Shadowfell, you know, like there's undead and it's dark and it's stank and there's vampire lords just living in castles and whatever. But the Feywild is very interesting to me because it's if you put like the unseelie and seelie courts into the Feywild and make a point to explain that like these Fey creatures that live here have these like very political interactions, and they have a much different system of morals and rules than like the rest of the world. Um, that is just so cool to me. Um, and I've never been able to use anything, and I'm really disappointed at the lack of things in 5e right now concerning Feywild. But the Feywild is really exciting to me as far as like just a plane of existence.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of the Feywild, what is one creature that you think stands out in the Feywild? And that'll move us into our next segment, which is kill it with fire.
One creature. Let me actually see. Not sure how many Fey there actually are.
Because I'm looking at a fairy dragon right now. I think is from the Feywild. I believe
The
so.
the creatures in the monster manual listed as Fey, a lot of them aren't ones that I would necessarily attribute as the primary inhabitants. The way I think of the Feywild is um, they're more or less elves, but they're like the pure form of elf, and the elves of this world are some sort of bastardized version. So the elves of this world, they relate to the Feywild. They have the Fey ancestry, etc. But the Fey, in and of themselves, are a wholly unique creature that is much more dangerous and much more volatile. Also much more powerful in the Feywild and also coming to this world. Um, but there's a few like homebrew monsters that are interesting. But like for instance, some of the Fey are like satires are considered as far as D&D is concerned part of the Feywild. The fairy dragons, pixies, things like that, sort of capricious creatures, usually, are ones you'll see in the Feywild.
Now, what about like elementals in that? Are they part of the Feywild? Like the Galebdur, I think is a really cool creature. That disguises itself as a rock, and then it pops up and it can pretty much kill you. I think those things are really cool. And they can
Yeah,
also
I mean,
animate boulders. Have you ever seen the labyrinth?
oh yeah,
You
of
know
course.
that Gordo or whatever his name is. He's like, oh, and like all the rocks start rolling around.
Yeah.
Now that's just like the Galebdur because they can actually. Oh, he's part of the Underdark apparently. So my bad.
I don't know about Galeb Elementals I consider like on an elemental plane,
Hmm.
like plane of fire, water. If you want to throw them all in one plane or separate the planes, however you want to make that easier for yourself or more complex, whatever interests you. But yeah, I mean, I think a Galabdor is definitely an elemental, but I might be wrong. I think of that as like a bigger earth elemental, but I'd have to actually look it up.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I mean the Galebdur here. Um, I kind of want to talk about them for a little bit because I wanted to use them, and I think I have used them once, but they're really freaking cool. I think, and there's I don't know of too many people that I've heard using them, but they actually can roll. They have a rolling charge, in which if the Galebdur rolls at least 20 feet straight towards the target and hits them with a slam attack, because they have the slam attack, which is their like basic melee, they take an extra 2d6 bludgeoning. If the target's a creature, it must succeed like a strength saving throw or just be knocked prone. So essentially, it's rolling, boom, and hits you, and you get knocked prone. So I think it's pretty cool. Ropers are creepy too.
I'm reading the lore for the Galabdor, and it's interesting because it's summoned from the plane of Earth, and it's a creature like with a very excellent memory, and it's more than happy to share information. So I think of like a happy boulder. It's just it knows it likes its life.
But
It's a
he's
free.
frowning in the monster manual, so
I mean, I don't think it can change its face. That's just how it was cut.
you never know.
I mean, I don't know, but I mean, it's at peace with its life. I mean, you can have angry Galapdors. Maybe they don't want to be here, but I mean, I would certainly run with a pretty intelligent rock that would be happy to talk to PCs and interact with them. Maybe not really understanding exactly what questions they might ask it,
Mhm.
depending on like why they're talking to him or if they just happen upon him.
Because it speaks Terran, which I've never even heard about
It's just
in
the
in
it's
it.
the rock elemental language. Like you've
Oh,
got
is it okay?
primordial, which I think would be the common of the elemental plane. This is how I view it.
Mm.
And then you've got Ignin, which is fire, Aquan, which is water, Terran, which is earth. Um, and I don't know if there's like a lightning one or a wind one, but I'm sure there is.
I just think it's so cool that they can animate boulders. Like they can animate up to two boulders apparently that I can see 60 feet from it,
Hmm.
and it has statistics similar to the Gale Door. So they're essentially it's like calling its family, like its cousins over or something. And yeah, it's just hilarious. I don't even know what they do. They just remain animated. Gale Door, it just animates a boulder. I guess that they become separate Gale Doors, maybe.
Um,
I guess it's up to the DM, really.
the way I think about it is sort of like I forget his name, but in Lord of the Rings there is Fangorn, I think, who's this tree ent.
Mhm.
And he basically explains to the halflings that at one time there were a lot of Ents, and they were basically fully awakened trees. And he basically explains that a lot of the trees now are asleep. So I think of that as like the Gale of Dor, like understands more about rocks than anyone probably ever wants to. So like it basically is just like, hey, Joe, Fred, wake up. And Joe and Fred kind of like lazily get up, and they're not really,
They're like they don't have their
they'll listen
coffee.
to him. Yeah. I mean, however you want to do that, but yeah, I mean that's kind of how I think of it. It's like Joe and Fred, the other rocks. They're not really awake, or they're just sort of the Gale Door. Just he knows so much about rocks, and he is so much part of that plane that he can summon the rocks to assist him when he needs to. So.
Definitely. And now it's mentioned Zorn are also cool elements. I've never used them myself. They do look really cool, and they apparently can smell treasure. So that's pretty creepy that they can smell your treasure on you, uh, and they try to eat them, apparently.
Yeah, I was looking at Zorn the other day. Yeah, basically, I think they're another planar creature. Yeah, elemental of element Earth, and yeah, they find treasure, and they want to eat gems and gold and things like that because it's they're gemstones from the earth and precious metals from the earth, and
Yeah,
that's
they're
how it
just
gets
regaining it.
food. Um, so yeah, I mean, it kind of runs through here that yeah, that's what they're drawn to. So they're pretty much drawn to adventurers who carry an ungodly amount of those things.
Yeah,
And yeah, I mean, it'll basically like PCs can certainly give this thing their gold if they don't want to fight it, or they could just be like, no, we're not going to feed you.
yeah, we're not going to give you our gold. We're going to hang on to all our treasure. They're like carrying bags of it, or they've got their mules. I think it's a cool way to bring a creature in there that might jeopardize your loot or might jeopardize your horse-drawn carriage or something. Like, hey, you notice something rumbling from the ground below your carriage, and it pops up and takes one of your bags of gold and just devours it.
Make you think of Treasure Goblin.
Pretty much, have the little goblin that runs away and you beat the hell out of it until it drops your loot.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a Zorn is a creature that is definitely a creature you could fight, but I'd want to bring a Zorn in when like it would be a difficult challenge for the NPCs, but not too difficult that they couldn't do it.
Hmm.
So that they actually have a choice, like, hey, we can give this thing our loot and our gold, or we can fight it, take, lose some of those resources, like, and keep our gold. What do these guys want to do? Because the Zorn will come up and basically just be like, feed me,
Yeah, feed me
feed
gold.
me that 1,000 gold you guys have. I'm hungry.
It has a taste for specific amounts of gold, like 1,234 gold pieces and two gems, like something like that.
Which happens to be the exact amount that your party has.
Yeah,
Of course.
like it could smell the exact amount of stuff that you had, and it was just really hankering for some of that.
Xavier
Yeah,
makes a good point that he had once had one terrorizing some miners. Like that's certainly in this fantasy world, like you could definitely have that happen. There's a Zorn and miners can't really deal with it, and it's like eating all the whatever they're mining, all the gems or whatever they have there, and PCs come and try to deal with it, whether they try to send it home or they just kill it and move on with their way.
yeah. I mean, it really. The thing is that there's so many different things you can do with that too. Like, I mean, as a DM, you have this Zorn terrorizing these miners. You can either have it be a helpful Zorn, like it eats the gems and stuff, and then poops out different materials, like building blocks or something, that the dwarves or whatever the miners can use. That's something that's just crazy to think about. But also, it can be like these miners go in there, they are like, oh, we're having a successful mining trip. Oh, well, this Zorn breaks out, so we got to pack up our bags and move to a different location because it's affected by these that are just ruining our mining operation. So, like, it's a common occurrence in the world, maybe, or it's something that happens to different mining companies, and then that's when you as characters find out about this, and you have to eradicate a number of them from around the world to help out the mining colonies or something.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think they're cool creatures. Um, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Cool, cool. Bum.
I was gonna say about the Fae too. A blink dog is another Fae creature, so like, I mean, really, just like the Fae are all about illusions and teleporting and not overpowering enemies. It's a lot of trickery and a lot of just waiting until they have you where they want you. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I mean, the Feywild and the and Shadowfall. I'm just a huge fan of zombies and undead and ghosts and ghouls and stuff. So this Shadowfell just I like that a lot. But the Feywild has a lot of creatures that are really entertaining in terms of their effects, their teleporting, their just their background, their story. And you were saying that they're lacking it in fifth edition right now, the Feywild creatures.
There's almost nothing. Like I just was reading Skag a little bit today, Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, and they threw a little more fluff into the god and goddesses of the Feywild, but there's still so little there.
Mhm.
And I've seen more homebrew content that I'm assuming some of it comes from converted editions, but yeah, I've seen a lot of really great Fey homebrew content, but not a lot of actual like Wizards of the Coast approved material so far. So I'd be really excited to see that, and if I don't see that soon, then I am just going to make a bunch of stuff up, and
Yeah.
that's what they're gonna do.
Definitely, I mean that ties us right into our next thing, the home brewery. So I mean, in terms of that homebrew content that you're talking about, like I've heard and seen a video of a converted, I think it was a converted 3.5 creature. You probably know it more than I do? It's this creature that is like a beetle, and it sees people, and it can actually take the flesh of them and try to put it around itself.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You don't know about that?
Um,
Okay.
nope.
It's really cool. There's an awesome video that someone wrote something up or read like this lore about it on the homebrew. Or it wasn't a home, it was essentially, I guess you could call it homebrew, but they took that and converted it to fifth edition, and it's just such a creepy creature that actually tries to mimic your friends. So like it kills your friend and it wears their skin, and it comes in and your friends kind of fidgeting and like talking like with this humming under its voice, and like you have to figure out that that's not your friend and that it's some weird creature that is trying to act human. And there was a scenario where it was like a bar that was filled with people, or no, sorry, it was a bar that was filled with one person, the bartender, and there was nobody else. And from below, the bartender was not visible because he was behind the bar stand or whatever, and he was maybe cleaning glass or whatever, doing what bartenders do or barkeeps do. and he was kind of fidgeting and talking with this little hum and saying like, oh, well, why don't you guys come around the back of the bar or something? And they were like acting really weird about it. They're like, no, I don't think we should do that. And lo and behold, this bug creeps and crawls out of this guy's skin and attacks them, and had previously eaten all the people that were in the bar before. So it's a really creepy creature that they have for 3.5 that they converted, and I think that homebrewing that kind of stuff or building it into it and when it's not there is really nice to have. Like you said, there's no fake creatures for 5th edition, but why not make your own or take some older ones and convert them to the newer one?
Yeah, definitely. Um, when you first said bug, I thought you were talking about something called an arcanumite,
Mhm.
which is from the subreddit Monster a Day, and it basically it's fun because it's a pretty low level creature. It's like CR1. It's not too big of an issue for really anyone. Um, it can reflect spells. It's like a random chance to. But the big thing it does is it attaches to spellcasters. It doesn't care about people without magic. It wants magic, and it sucks magic from them. It takes their spell slots.
Yeah.
So I love these guys in that you've got this fight going on, and your wizard's in the back just slinging spells. Fireball, lightning bolt, whatever you've got, and then this little bug comes up and bites into his ankle, and suddenly this guy is in mortal terror because his precious spell slots are dissolving, and he needs help. Like a wizard's not gonna bang this thing off him or pry it off too easily. You need to grab that fighter from the front line, or that ranger beside you that might be more physically able
Mhm.
to get this thing off you. Because even though it's not that strong, it does it does the scariest thing.
So does
You
it does it bite into you and then that absorbs your spell slot until you kill it, or does it take it all together?
The way it's set up as far as the homebrew content is it it will suck like an X amount of spell slots from you, so like up to three. Like it can take like a third level spell slot. It'll take like 3 1s, whatever that is. But and then it's full, and then it kind of scurries away. But if there's one, there's more. But that's usually how it is. And you can regain them,
Yeah, yeah.
on a long sword rest. But it basically like takes your spell slot for the day. Um, but yeah, I mean that's essentially what it does. Um, but yeah,
That's
there's
pretty
a lot
cool
of
because
cool
it gets
stuff.
people to think about things differently when you're in battle and like this bug just crawls out from the bushes behind you and you're not paying attention and bites into your leg. And then it's like, okay, guys, whenever we go into battle, I need to always look behind myself or get a fighter behind me so these bugs don't come out and keep biting me, or if we're in this region and these bugs are really relevant, then it makes the wizard think of where to position themselves to get away from these things.
One thing too is ritual spells right now in 5e. It gets a little bit like, I mean, tiresome for me when people are like, "Well, I just cast this spell as a ritual," and then you just fast forward 10 minutes. What I thought about doing was I'll roll and see the time it takes this guy to cast this ritual. Is he gonna summon these little arcanomites that are like magic, magic, magic? Ooh,
Mm.
I love magic. And just try to get that magic. I mean, he's spending time to do it, and creates a better sense of time. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool homebrew stuff. We've got someone in the guild who is actually converting a lot of things from the Wheel of Time book series into homebrew content that he's putting on the Unearthed Arcana subreddit, Vindict.
Yep.
Um, he does West Marches. He runs a campaign right now, and he's also in a couple campaigns too. But he has a really good sense of the math behind making creatures and that sort of thing. And he's been basically making up stuff directly from a fantasy book series and putting it, on the internet, getting feedback, and you know, putting that in his big folder of DM material to use one day.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something we need to get together is like a homebrew folder of some cool stuff. I mean, I know Vindic's been doing that for a while too, and a lot of people like the homebrew stuff that they released online. That there's that whole forum or wiki devoted to it. Converting, yeah, magic items is really fun too. I like creating magic items, to be honest. Like I've sat down with Rusty for a couple different hours, like a couple different sessions with Rusty, and we've created magic items specifically for our players to gain through the game, and it's like unique to them. And I think that was a lot of fun. Um, Another homebrew thing that I'm working on, which I want to get more playtests in for, is the Steelborn Avatar system, which you guys can definitely take part in. I will be scheduling some more sessions here soon. You can check out the calendar for that, but that is like my baby right now. Like that thing is a lot of fun to design, and the couple play sessions that we did do, playtest sessions that we did play, were a lot of fun. It's focusing on, RP, but also kind of like a villager tycoon type thing where you're building your character up from becoming from being a peasant and also using a profession, almost MMO sense. And we're building it as we move along. We're figuring out what we like, what we don't like, and the whole way it's just homebrew. Based off of 5e. I really like 5e, so I'm using that as kind of a guideline, but then I'm taking that, breaking it, and then building it in my own way. So it's definitely something to get involved with.
Yeah, definitely.
Taking a look at this Arcanumite that he linked to. Nice. That's so cool looking.
Yeah, that's a really good subreddit for this is Monster Day, so every day they're putting out either some lore about some monsters or, well, they always put out one monster every day, and then sometimes they'll add lore in for other monsters they've created and include the stat block. But I've added a lot of these things to my campaign, because even if it's just another big set of things that you can use, and there's also a Kickstarter that came out. I think it's over with now, so they're probably going to come out with the books, but it's like 300 new monsters and NPCs, or whatever, to use for your 5e adventures. And I will probably get a copy of that book, because 300 homebrew things that I do not have to make myself sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess throw it onto creatures to modify them. So yeah, Zay Shore is talking about Half Dragon Owlbear. I'd like to see the homebrew for that. Also about templates that basically you have this template of, I think, stats, or maybe it's an ability, a racial ability, or just a creature ability that you can just place on anything. An owl, a bird, a cat, whatever. And it becomes that, right? It becomes a part of that. So like a half elf owlbear, or a half dragon owlbear. You could easily have a half dragon template or a dragon template that you put on an owlbear, and now it's a dragon owlbear, which is much scarier.
Yeah, it's good to see that these Kickstarters are making their goals too. Like a lot of homebrew content that's getting back. That's really, really cool, and that's something that I wanted to get involved with too, because I just love developing things. And if we know that Vindic does that kind of stuff, and we see that, I don't know, this is getting traction, like it's something cool to be involved in, whether it be a book that explains different scenarios that you could have happen in your campaign, whether it be creatures that are homebrewed, whether it be magic weapons, all that kind of stuff. That people like to have that, and the more and more you give them, that's the more and more they can pick from that pool, and keep playing their games as long as they possibly want. Because in the long run, you want to play D&D your entire life. Most people do. It's the most fun I've ever had playing a game, and why wouldn't you want that every day in your life, And this helps them do that, the homebrew content that's being released constantly, or being kickstarted constantly.
Yeah, definitely. Did you want to pick out a few homebrews to look at, just to kind of check them over, or no?
Yeah, definitely. If you've already found some, you can just link them in chat, and we can go and talk about them.
Let me see here. Have you ever made your own homebrew stuff at all, Bronze?
In terms of creatures, like homebrew stuff we've made. Let me see if I can pull them up here. We did make some magic items. So we've got Duke's Treasure Hoard here. Let me see, I can pull these up right now. Yeah, cool. So we did actually homebrew some stuff, or we reskinned some stuff. So what happened was, like, we've got the Lich Blood Amulet, which is reskinned. I forget which one I listed it from, but it's reskinned from something else. But when you put that on, makes you immune to... Actually, no, you know what? This might not be a homebrewed one. Basically, you can tell me if it's homebrewed or not, but when you put this on, your body starts to rot away. So like your fingers, toes, nose, and ears over the course of 4 days, like they start to rot off and just fall apart.
Mhm.
Um, and you emit like a foul smell that animals within 30 feet are like hostile towards you. I don't know if that one's
I mean, I mean, I know quite a bit of the DMG and MM, but I mean, I don't know all of it, so it certainly could be
okay.
in there,
Well, I mean,
or
people
it
in
could be
chat too.
hungry.
Yeah, I think that one's just a reskin one. But we do have no. Hold on, let me open up a different one because I think these are all reskinned. We do have magic items. Here we go. Yeah, so these are all the custom ones we made that Rusty and I sat down. Cursed items, yeah, that's what we were dealing with. But so this is one we made specifically for Duke. It is called the Soul Eater. So what it was a staff, and it's sent to Duke from an unknown benefactor, which was Severian, which is the warlock that was a big baddie in our game too. But he sent it to him. It's got 3 skulls that you can summon at will 3 times per day. It essentially kind of acts like, I think, mirror image. So once per encounter, regenerates at sundown. Let me actually put this on the screen too, so you guys can read it. Add window. Bam. Gonna minimize it a bit. And I'll try to zoom into it and stuff so you guys can see it. Give me one moment. I see Soul Eater written there. So yeah, it's called the Soul Eater. You have defense, roll a d20, stays. So you can either use it as defense or offense. 3 skulls, yeah, they work like a mirror image. So essentially, if someone shoots something at you, it'll either hit the skull or hit you because the skulls are floating around you. You can also use it as a latch bomb. So you take the skull, you throw it, and the skull turns into like a flame skull and latches onto the character, and then it blows up after it bites you. So it's pretty cool. He had that he could use. Let me take a look at this one that Old Mage is linking. The image doesn't work that you linked, Soul Mage, unfortunately. Maybe I need to copy the whole thing. Hold on one second. There we go. I don't know what that is. I don't watch anime, unfortunately, so
Oh God.
they linked me some anime.
Wow.
How dare you?
This
Hashtag offended. Like a cool fusion of mirror images and minute meteors. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the thing is, Rusty knew more about this kind of stuff, like mechanics, than I did. We've got another one that we can talk about, which is one that I really like. And it is from my Hall of Paladins that actually, Xtrordinari, you've encountered this blade. The Essence of Malorn, it's that blade that actually glows like purplish and reddish that you guys actually saw in there.
Mhm.
And when you pick it up, you have to roll certain things. But it's a great sword. It has just base radiant damage, and then you get +1 per level as you level up. And allies within 10 feet get a radiant bonus of +5. So it essentially gives everyone radiant damage that's around you. So like it imbues your weapons
Wow.
with some stuff. So that was
Yeah,
a really fun
that's
one.
pretty strong.
Oh,
That's
talk
really
about
good.
strong. So
And
uh,
you love undead too, so that's like
that was a bad. That was a bit crazy on that. And then there's also Shadowcraft, which I called it Shadowcraft. It's a hammer that one of my players had, and he became evil in the campaign, and everyone hated him for that because he shook the hand of an Oathbreaker, one of my most powerful Oathbreakers, and he became corrupted and evil. And so there was an original weapon called Artisan that is like the holy version of it, in which you slam this weapon on the ground, it summons a portal that something comes out of to help you, to assist you. So Shadowcraft, which is the opposite of Artisan, summons these crazy things. So you can roll a d10, and then if you roll a 9 or a 10, you have to roll a d100, and that'll summon something else. But so you roll a d10, and anything from 1 to 8 summons like a series of things that I have listed here, and it was pretty crazy. Like it would just be insane because they were so low level at the time, and I would always just have them summon whatever, and then we would just kind of fight it, and I would just kind of homebrew what was going on at the time. I would play it kind of like a movie, in a sense. Like you could fight a vampire at level 3 and possibly kill it, depending on how you played it. But I didn't want people to die. I just wanted them to have fun. So that's why I created Shadowcraft and Artisan and that. And Rusty and I worked together to make the lists of things that is summoned. We got a lot. I mean, we got a lot of stuff that I have here that is really cool and fun to use, like the Bow of Elements. I think there was something where you could choose when you were firing what element you would fire the arrow as. What else? We have the Crystalline Great Axe here, which you would slam the axe down, and it would create a wave of energy that would follow through, either horizontal, vertical, diagonal, whatever. There was also Shapeshifter, which was a great sword that could change into whatever you decided that it would look like at the time, but it would always retain the great sword feature. I don't know, that was insane. I don't know why we did that.
You
We
could
have
have a dagger, basically.
essentially, yeah, you'd be attacking with a dagger, and well, I mean, it would look like a dagger, but you'd have to hold it like a great sword. So you'd be holding a dagger like this, and you'd be like, and people would be confused at why you were doing that, or you'd be hitting people with a bow and arrow, and like you would be doing great sword damage and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff I have here that we could talk about. But is there anything that you want to bring up in terms of homebrew?
I was gonna look up Vindic's thing right here real quick. Um,
Sorry, there was a horn blaring over here for some reason.
yeah, no worries. Just trying to bring up something that's.
Are you gonna take a look at his alien creatures that he made?
Um, we can.
It's up to you. Whatever you want to bring
Let
up
me
for.
bring up. Let me bring up one of these Fae that I thought was really cool in Monster Day. It might not be that interesting. Uh, I thought it was really cool, but basically just I thought it was really cool just because it adds a little more to the Fae. It's basically called I think a guardian, some sort of grove guardian. Yeah, there it is.
Let me
I
take a
linked
look
in
at
the
it.
chat. I can link it to you as well.
Yeah, this is something that Vindic made.
No, this isn't what Vidic made. I'll bring something up that he made in a minute. Um, but this thing, it's large Fae. The one thing that's great about this Monster Day is, one, they have a lot of great lore, but also two, the artwork that they find, and good on them for crediting it too, which is great. But they find some really, really good artwork that really evokes a lot of nice imagery. Um, but you have this thing, and basically imagine these things, living in the Fae itself, and it's sort of equivalent to like a wolf in like the material plane, but it has innate spellcasting, which a lot of things in Fae would have, because it's just one of those realms that's just very magic heavy, but also too you see this thing traveling, and it has a tree stride feature, which is a feature that a few monsters in the MM have, where it can basically magically step into a living tree and then come out at a second living tree, like 60 feet away. Um, so you can do a lot of things with that, like this, like you guys see this thing, you describe it, and then it disappears behind the tree. And as you think like the part of its body that should come out the other side should come out, it doesn't. And that's what you describe to them, and your player's like, wait, what are you talking about? So they go over to this tree and there's nothing there, and then they turn around and this thing is behind them. Like you can do a lot of cool stuff with that, not just with combat as well. But yeah, it's just basically a Fae that you can add into your world that can do a lot of cool things, especially in the Fae realm. I just love the Fae realm, so
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
that's why I like
the
this.
artwork for this too, like, gets you excited about it. Like seeing this, and I think the artwork is really, really big thing that I like, in terms of the monster manual. Not that I just like to go scroll through and look at pictures and that's it, but like this creature here, like it invokes a feeling when you see it, and like to think about you fighting this thing it's just really cool. To have this fey creature go around and you're just, I don't even know if I would fight this thing. Like it seems like it's docile in this photo, but I mean it's essentially a guardian, I guess, and it wouldn't necessarily be a predator, I guess. In terms of you, I'm not too sure with this thing.
I mean, the way I think about it is that, maybe it guards like a grove, a dryad grove or something like that.
Mm.
Um, so like I wouldn't necessarily run it as this um
Hostile
aggressive
creature, yeah,
creature.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not aggressive, and you can maybe even talk to it. Like if you understand Sylvan or can talk to beasts and animals, I would certainly let you talk to this thing. Um, try to give it a bit of an ethereal sense and maybe kind of answering in anachronisms or something along those lines. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's aggressive. You certainly could run this as aggressive, or you can just flavor it to something else. Yeah, I mean, this could be certainly something in the real world or material world that druids might be able to summon to protect a grove or a forest or something along those lines.
Yeah, it's definitely a really cool creature, and like, I like how these people are creating these homebrews, and then you can just, I mean, you can use them whenever you want. I mean, they're just out there on the internet. I didn't know about them, and most people who just buy the monster manual will not know about these things, and they're being created every day, so it's pretty cool, and it's listed as monster a day, so I'm guessing people post their daily.
Yeah, what happens is I think it's one guy, and he basically makes it. Um, but uh, but yeah, I mean, it's one guy. He makes these monsters. Other people have put up their monsters as well, but I think it's primarily one person that does this subreddit. But there's a pretty big community following it. Pretty much anyone that's interested in Humper content or just seeing new monsters. I think at this point, a lot of people just want more stuff, and it's just a good subreddit to provide it. The next thing I was going to bring up is one of Vindix. I could not find his other thing, but he has this thing called a golem, which I'm not familiar with Wheel of Time, but he's basically bringing these things from the Wheel of Time book series, and you can kind of look at it and basically just check it out. But yeah, this
Yeah,
is something that the community made.
definitely. Yeah, let me take a look at this. I mean, it'd be cool if you had some artwork with it too, but we can't ask for everything. Uh,
Oh gosh, Bronze.
I have to
Yeah, I mean
read stuff.
yeah, it's interesting. It's got some interesting flavor text there. The Dark One's gift, I think that exists as something else. It basically just makes it immune to all magic. So you cannot throw spells at this thing. It doesn't care. So you have to like physically attack this thing,
Yeah.
um, and it's immune to non-silver. So you basically have to attack it with silvered weapons. I don't even think magical weapons would work. So it's a
Hmm.
very specific weapon type. But it's got this vampiric trait there, where if it doesn't feed on fresh human blood once every 3 days, so this is certainly an aggressive creature.
Yeah.
If that did not already speak to you uh, before, um, its mind begins to deteriorate, losing control of itself and becoming unstable, which typically results in the golem going on a murderous rampage until its hunger is sated, um, which is great. And then you can also have like weaker golems too. So you see, like, does not feed for 10 days, it loses 1d4,
Yeah.
stats for every
I
day.
think it's interesting that it has a short sword. It's got a claw and a short sword.
I think it's supposed to be some sort of humanoid. Let me look at this. Yeah,
Yeah, medium height humanoid
monstrosity.
monstrosity. So definitely cool. It'd be cool to see some artwork. I'm imagining Cthulhu right now because he has Dark One's gift, like over here.
Yeah, I'll get on Benedict.
Yeah,
Put some
you just
artwork
come
on
on,
these
man.
things.
Put some artwork together. Either stick figures. You should totally do stick figures on here.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people would love them.
But yeah, I'm glad to see that he's doing a lot of homebrew stuff, and people crave homebrew. So it's good to see. But yeah, anyone in chat have any homebrew stuff that they they really like that you want us to chit chat about? Because I could talk about my homebrew stuff all day, but I mean, hey, I've talked about that over and over, and we need to save it for some future shows too. Because
Yeah,
I
I have
have,
a lot of.
yeah.
I was gonna say, I have a lot of like homebrew stuff that I basically just take it from the internet. But as far as things I've made, I haven't made anything special. Most of the things that I like are
Oh, that's a good one.
very simple.
Homebrew classes. Have we seen any homebrew classes that we like? Wasn't the
Um,
Swashbuckler a homebrew, or is that just
People have homebrewed Swashbuckler, tried to fix the original UA that came out with it,
mm,
because the original UA was pretty beastly. Basically, just getting to attack without provoking opportunity attacks at any point. I think you had like an initiative bonus. It was overall pretty strong. Um, I'm trying to bring this up. There is I personally, Matt Mercer, who runs Critical Role, does a bit of homebrew for his. He released like a gunslinger and a witch hunter, made specifically for players in his campaign. The witch hunter was actually made for Vin Diesel, who played a game with them.
oh yeah,
But
I saw the video. Like the I didn't watch the whole thing because I don't think do they have an entire session that they have recorded?
yeah, I think it's about an hour, so it's a
Yeah,
shorter session than normal.
I saw him talking to them afterwards, so it was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean the Witch Hunter because his new movie's coming out. I know, so he was playing that to promote it. There was also a homebrew class that someone's been trying to make in the community. I don't know if he's still around or whatnot, but it was more of like a I guess it was based off Naruto, he said. Some sort of shadow character, shadow ninja type thing. People are huge fans of just shadow and ninjas. And like they like to combine the two and be able to teleport and have all these shadow darkness. And I was like, whoa, man, you're getting too crazy. Don't put darkness all over yourself. And he was like, well, I'm thinking of having these cubes of darkness that are launched out, and I'm stronger in the dark, weaker in the day type thing. And it was cool to sit down with him and like start to kind of take his broad ideas and refine them. And that's what I'm doing with that Steelborn Avatar system too. So the classes relate to that in the sense that we have to take everything that's broad and narrow it down. I think homebrew a lot of times is that broadened sense of an idea and then just building it down to something that is usable.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to come out with your concept. A lot of times, I'll see a lot of homebrew that comes out that's very just like, it's just overboard. Like they have given whatever they've made so much stuff, and it's just like you need to simplify. You need to drop it down to a level where, it makes sense. Especially if you're trying to balance it. If you're not trying to balance it, then sure, man, that's fine. Do whatever you want. Um, but if you're trying to balance it, you want to bring it down to a level where it makes sense to live in the same world as your other PCs or your other monsters, and it makes sense basically for that to come out. One thing, bring up this that is that's a gunslinger archetype that Matt Mercer made for Critical Role. Um, it's basically a fighter martial archetype, and I don't think he converted directly from 3.5, but I'm sure that he used a lot of 3.5s to give him the idea of what he wanted to make. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
not,
I
I'm
was
just
like,
reading it. Yeah, yeah.
no, I thought the stream paused for a second. But it's interesting because, Gunslingers are just fun. I don't know if you've ever read Dark Tower series. Um, but it's a Stephen King novel, and the main character is Gunslinger, and he's just the Clint Eastwood basically, and it's so cool.
Get off
Um,
my lawn.
exactly these laconic phrases that Clint Eastwood is just so good at delivering.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I think I mean, this gets me interested in creating some stuff because, I mean, this is just a two-sheeter, explaining stuff,
mhm.
and that's it, and he's got it already ready to go. I mean, this works in their game. I mean, I guess if you're homebrewing it for your game and people understand it, then, I mean, you can use whatever, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I look at it, looks pretty solid. It makes some interesting mechanics. Like the deeds are good. The crit seems pretty fun. Um, the trick shots actually allowed for a mechanic that's not really in 5e called shots. Like, flavor wise, people will say, I cut off this thing's arm, or I attack its legs, or, I cut it in the neck. Um, and you're like, all right. And then essentially that still amounts to the same amount of damage. Like, they're not really affecting it in a significantly different way by calling a shot on a different part of their body. But this trick shot mechanic on the second page basically allows the gunslinger to call a shot at the cost of, for them, the mechanic of a grit point.
which I think is really cool. I like the the name of it, a grit point. I mean, you've got True Grit type
Mm-hmm.
deal, where you got Jeff Bridges in that movie with that little girl, and it's just being like gritty in a sense that you are this gunslinger cowboy type rough edged hero in a sense. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, in different things you do actually have different effects. Shoot the arm. You sacrifice damage, but it drops its weapon or its shield, right?
Mhm.
So you've affected the field of battle, and it probably has to do something to get that back. Or, like I was playing my fighter, and for a little while there, and I'll still probably do it if I get the opportunity. Is I was just like this huge orc in front of me with this great axe that really hurts. I'm gonna disarm it, and I put this thing through like 3 or 4 saves, but I finally disarmed this thing with its great axe,
Yeah,
and it was a lot less scary. I mean, it could still punch me for a lot because it was, you had strength, and it's I think it had multi attack, whatever. But without that, 2d12 or whatever the great axe is, I think 2d6, um, because it's not getting away from me to pick up its great axe because I'm not letting it, and I've got my buddies shooting at it as well, so it really changes the battlefield. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's the misfire mechanic is fun. The reload mechanic's pretty cool. The weapons here are a lot stronger than the PHP. Not a lot, but they're like a die or two stronger, and the ranges are much higher than the DMG.
yeah.
Um,
Because I mean, if you're playing super realistic, I mean, the DMG ranges probably weren't that weren't that good for you, I guess. In terms of like if you're actually measuring it realistically. Like I really am itching to play one of those types of games, but I also like to keep things free form, and I think that it takes a lot of thinking, a lot of reading to know how the distance is. But you have those different players that like to actually get down to that and understand how far something is away, and if it actually makes sense for you to be able to shoot that. I don't know. I really do want to play that, but I don't know if I'm smart enough for that yet.
yeah, I mean, a lot of it's just what you're interested in, how much you want to get into. Um, there's so much. If you want like a super gritty, realistic campaign, you're gonna have to look up a lot of things, most likely, and even on the fly to really
Mhm.
kind of see, like what are the ranges and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, for this gunslinger, like the pistol ranges, I think in the DMG are like 30, 60, and he's put it at 100 and 400. But specifically, that's because the character that he was making this for, um, I guess he had like demon guns basically, so they were like very powerful kind of things. So he brought that up, or maybe he just felt that the damages were a little low. Um, I'm not sure, but
You could have some homebrew content that has higher health points too, or something like that.
yeah,
We're not sure
definitely.
what else goes into effect in terms of that, but it's good to see a two-sheeter that gives you a whole new class to play because I know a lot of players that I've heard within the community are getting bored of what 5e already has. They've been playing for a bit with the 5th edition content, and now the Sword Coast guide that got released or whatever, the addition, the expansion to it, has the swashbuckler and I think the purple dragon knight they were talking about.
Yeah.
So those are
I
two new things to play.
Yeah, there's a lot of fluff in there, which is great if you like fluff. There's also quite a bit of background. Uh, I don't. There's no new classes. I don't think so. There's new kind of archetypes or sub races, things like that. Um, so yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting what people bring those into the game and how they fit into the rest of the game. Um, I was honestly going through it earlier because I'm running a Faerun campaign, so I need to actually catch up on my own personal Faerun lore.
Mm.
I know a lot about Drow, but not that much about anything that doesn't directly relate to the Drow, which I think are just such a cool race of people.
Yeah,
Um,
Drow are really cool. The Underdark people. I mean, you got the what are they called? Dryads too. Or maybe I think it's something else. The half spider people. What are they?
Riders,
Drider. That's what it is. Not
hmm
Dryad.
yeah,
Yeah, those guys are really cool too. Just the whole. Isn't Lilith the person that they're Spider Queen or something?
all hail our Lord, our God, our goddess and queen Loth.
Loth.
Um,
That's what it is. Not Lilith. What am I saying? I don't know anything. Don't listen to me.
Loth, one of eight legs, the beauty that is.
Well, if you like art,
Just,
if you like the Faerun pantheon, I mean, oh, I thought you said Patreon. Never mind. It doesn't even tie into what I was going to talk about. I like dwarven gods, freaking smiths, like all that kind of stuff. That's what I'm a fan of. I think freaking Onatar is the smithing god or the crafting god, right? Your mic cut out. I think he unplugged his headset.
sorry.
I thought you unplugged your headset.
No, I've been switching out the mute in between my coffee and that sort of
Oh,
thing.
you went completely silent. And
Devices.
you were just like,
Oh, I was saying I just know about Morden, but I know a couple other dwarven gods vaguely. The one that was really interesting to me is actually like apparently dead.
oh, wow.
It was like, well, I guess in Faerun lore that one's dead, so I don't
Well,
know.
I mean, freaking like dwarves for some reason in every game, in every movie, and everything, they're dead. Like they're dead and gone, and like no one likes them. They don't want to talk about them. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's just like, hey, there's elves and humans, guys. Look at them. Like I guess like dwarves are too ugly to look at or something. They're too small, too short. People don't like them. There's not enough
They're just
dwarf or gnome love.
they're just smart. They didn't disappear. They just buried deeper, so they don't have to deal with anybody else.
Mhm. They have one big doorbell that's on the floor to bing bong, and like if they
Dwarves
deliver
don't
some.
dwarves don't have a doorbell. They have like a mile wide entrance into their home that only shows the key every like 300
With
years at
moonlight.
the light of yeah, at
Yeah,
the
with
light of this super special like blue moon or something.
mm.
Um, so yeah.
All right, cool. Well, we got about 4 minutes left before we end the show, so I'm going to go ahead and do some shout out plug-in stuff. So if you guys haven't already done so, make sure to check out our friends over at Encounter Roleplay at www.twitch.tv/Encounter Roleplay for more tabletop fun. Definitely cool guys. They're doing really, really well. They've been with us since we were in our early stages, and they're really developing into something that is a really cool, Twitch show. Definitely check them out, watch them, and give them some Steelborn love. Um, Other than that, I mean, make sure to follow us on, on Twitch here. You can follow us on Twitter at this Steelborn. You can follow X, of course. I already linked this earlier, but you can follow Xtrordinari. He just made his today, so make sure to follow him. Give him 1 million follows tonight. So you can follow him at Xtrordinari. What else do we have? We have a Patreon. I saw you mentioned Pantheon, and it reminded me of Patreon. We do have a Patreon. I will be creating a video soon. After we finish up the commercial for the Haunted House, I will be asking them to create a commercial for us on the Patreon. Hopefully we get people from around the world in our community actually send in video clips that I can put together in that commercial that we can put on our Patreon. But we've got 2 backers right now on there, which is funding us. We are still working towards our goal to go to Gen Con in 2016, so we got a bit of time before that starts, but we definitely want to secure our place and get a booth over there. So anything helps in the community, even just some friendly advice. Other than that, I mean, I think we got everyone in the channel from Steelborn. So if you're not already part of Steelborn Legion, or if you have friends, make sure that they join up. It's a great community, lots and lots of fun, and we are building every day. So, anything you want to say, Xtrordinari?
No, keep it real, guys.
All right, cool. So yeah, we're just gonna end it here. If no one has any other questions, we will see you next Saturday night, 7 p.m. Central, same time. It'll be X and I. We might bring guests onto the show. We're not too sure yet. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching, and see you guys in the next one.